Psychic Malamar. Slightly different versions, but I don't think your eyes are deceiving you. There's one copy of Friend Ball in Darren's list.
I recognize that Friend Ball anywhere.
Huh.
Pretty interesting to see. Sorry to cut you off, but
No,
it's not very often we see a Friend Ball.
Dude, if we're seeing something different and unique, I will stop talking. I'm happy to let you do the talking, Kyle. Now, why do you think he's playing that?
If he expects a lot of Malamar decks, Friend Ball is an excellent card. It just lets you search for any Pokemon in your deck. It's like playing an Ultra Ball, but you don't have to discard any cards.
Sounds pretty sweet to me. And here we are going to get into game number 1. The clock has started. It's a Marshadow GX for Darin and an Inkay in the active for Alex, as well as another Inkay on the bench. And we're going to kick things off with a Mysterious Treasure.
So this is one of the terrible starting Pokemon for Darin. Marshadow GX is very powerful against things like Zoroark GX and Pikachu and Zekrom GX because it is for weakness. It's a fighting type Pokemon, but it is very much so a glass cannon. It can do a lot of damage. It can use that Shadow Hunt ability to use the attacks of some of your strongest Pokemon, but it only has 150 HP, and in this matchup, has a weakness to Psychic. So something like Giratina can come out and just use Shadow Impact, knock out Marshadow, and take 2 prize cards. So Darin has to be a little deflated seeing that he's opening with that Marshadow.
It's a very flimsy Pokemon, but the fact that it does have that fighting type gives this deck so much better coverage in certain matchups. So it makes perfect sense, especially in the version of Psychic Malamar that Darin is playing, which is a much more teched out non-Ultra Necrozma variant. So we've got a copy of Dawnwing's Necrozma, a copy of Gengar and Mimikyu GX. So it turns out Pikachu and Zekrom, not the only tag team we're seeing here this weekend. And then, of course, Giratina, the Marshadow, and even a copy of the regular Necrozma GX.
Yeah, this is the more traditional Malamar build that's been used throughout the season so far. A lot of people have shifted over to Ultra Necrozma thanks to Viridian Forest, which has allowed you to have a little bit more of a consistent energy base where you're able to search out the metal energy for Ultra Necrozma when you need it. But there's something to be said for just this straightforward psychic version of the deck. And Darin is running some important tech cards that will help him in the mirror match. Even though he started off with Marshadow GX, he does play one of those Chimecho with the Bell of Silence attack, which can really disrupt an opposing Malamar deck early on.
Yeah, it's a great meta call for him, and especially going to be very helpful in this matchup right here. Second Mysterious Treasure coming down. And even with that Marshadow in the active, throwing a wrench in his plans, he is starting to set up quite well. He's even going to let loose here.
Yeah, this is what you hope for when you go first with the Malamar deck. Play down a bunch of Inkay, play as many cards as you can, and then let loose and wish your opponent good luck.
Alex, of course, going to be taking his first turn with just 4 cards in hand now, and Darin getting a fresh 4 here to maybe continue turn number 1. It does take a little bit of time to set up here with both of these decks, but Darin doing a nice job.
Yeah, this looks more like a Marshadow deck than a Malamar deck at this point.
See the Gengar and Mimikyu GX in the hand for Darin now.
All right, he does get a third Inkay, so pretty strong start. Did get a couple Psychic Energy in the discard pile, at least 1. So that's all you can really ask. Well, it looks like he got 3 in there, so excellent start so far. And
as long as he can find a couple Malamar for the next turn, he's going to be getting off to a very fast start.
Yeah, now we'll find out, did Alex draw anything good off of his Let Loose? Attaches Psychic Energy to Inkay, so that's not a great sign, but does have an Ultra Ball. Can search for something like a Tapu Lele GX or a Jirachi to help smooth out his draw, maybe hit a supporter card. Although it does not look like he's playing Tapu Lele GX.
He looks like he's favoring his own Marshadow to let loose and get 4 fresh cards. Without that Tapu Lele GX, you don't have access to Wonder Tag, and then it can be a little bit more difficult to find the supporters you need at the right times.
Yep, gonna grab a Marshadow of his own. So both sides are gonna let loose at the beginning of this game. And we'll see, does Alex find a supporter card off of his Let Loose? It's always great when you can let loose and then draw into something like Lily on your first turn. Because then you have a low hand size already. You can usually play down a couple cards, and then you Lily draw up to 8 cards. And it really just sets you up for the following turns.
Very importantly here, Darin is going to be looking at a very nice turn 2, very likely. So if Alex does whiff on the draw supporter here, then he could be very far behind just in the first couple turns of the game. You don't want to have to make up all of that ground when you're playing a deck that does require quite a bit of setup here. He does find the Lily, though.
Yeah, that's Darin. He's got a Lily in his hand.
Ah, jeez. Never mind.
I don't know if Alex really has much of anything in his hand. He's got a Mysterious Treasure, but as we said, no Tapu Lele. Oh,
no,
never mind.
The Lily.
They both have Lily.
Bailed out.
So yeah, that's a very strong start. Draw 6 cards off of Lily, and that's exactly why you play this card. You want to play it on the first turn, fill up your hand. It's a decent card after the first turn, but you really want to play it immediately. If you can't do it on your first turn, then usually your start's a little weak.
Mysterious Treasure, search through the deck again. He did discard an Ultra Necrozma with the Ultra Ball. Still got 1 in the deck, it looks like.
Yeah, typically these Malamar mirror matches come down to non-GX Pokemon because you have strong options like the Giratina, and you really don't want to put GXs into play unless you really have to. So I think Alex is going to try to go for Giratina, especially seeing that Darin started off with Marshadow GX. It'll just help him get ahead in the prize race because he can trade 1 prize card for 2, knocking out the GX.
We see the first Stellar Wish of the game, and Alex is going to fetch that Viridian Forest, make searching out all of the energy he's going to need this game that much easier.
Yeah, Jirachi has been the star of this tournament so far. That Stellar Wish ability has proven to be excellent in all sorts of decks. We see it in all the Lightning decks. We see it in the Malamar decks. We haven't seen it in Zoroark or Blacephalon, but still, it is in a large majority of the decks here in Day 2.
And that is going to be Giratina's Distortion Durability. You can bring it back from your discard, put it on your bench, and put a single damage counter on 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. It actually helps set up for potentially Sky Scorching Light GX knockouts from the Ultra Necrozma, but we were seeing that more so when the opposing player has Jirachis on the bench.
And this will be a pretty crucial turn for Darin. This is his second turn. He could get out a couple Malamar, try to set up a big attacker this turn, get the first knockout. Another option could be if he's able to get that Chimecho in the discard pile, he could start using that Bell of Silence attack. Jirachi makes it a little awkward against Chimecho because it has resistance to Psychic. So normally, Chimecho uses Bell of Silence and it kind of pokes away. It can get a knockout sometimes, but because of Jirachi's resistance, it does 0 damage, and it can create kind of a weird stalemate. If you're attacking with Marshadow GX, it's a fighting type, so you can still hit for 10 damage.
Looks like Darin did find 1 Malamar.
Yeah, looks like it's going to be a pretty decent turn. I think he has a Malamar and Mysterious Treasure in his hand. So he'll get at least 2 Malamar out this turn if he wants to. The Acrobikes have not been super kind to him so far. It's always a nerve-wracking card to play when you look at your top 2 cards. You have to discard one of them. You get to take the other. But when you see 2 good cards, it can be painful to throw one of them away.
Yeah, he opts for the Cynthia. Board's getting a little bit full. Would rather find maybe a secondary attacker instead of that Jirachi right now.
So it looks like Darin is just a little bit short. He does not have an energy in hand. He can get 1 more Malamar out, but that's only 2 energy, and you can only Psychic Recharge to the bench. So he doesn't have quite enough to power up something like Giratina this turn. He's going to be a little off. Looks like he'll miss the turn to attack. And that means Alex is going to have a big advantage if he can start setting up his Malamar.
That's a bit unfortunate. It was looking like he was potentially going to have that turn to attack and start getting ahead in the prize race, which he really needs because of that Marshadow that he unfortunately started.
So Darin does play Mysterious Treasure, trying to figure out which Pokemon to take. He can take any Psychic or Dragon-type Pokemon from his deck. And looks like he is choosing to go for Giratina. Instead of getting the second Malamar, decides, I need to start charging up an attacker.
Yeah, and like you were saying, this is going to come down to mostly those single prize attackers. Giratina of which is going to be the most effective. 130 damage for 3 energy is pretty potent.
Yeah, a lot of the matches we see between Malamar decks just turn into my Giratina knocks out your Giratina. Oh, then Distortion Door brings it back. We Psychic Recharge, put all the energy on it. Giratina comes back, knocks out your Giratina, and just back and forth trading prize cards over and over. And at some point, you need to try to break up the monotony a little bit, because if you're behind in that exchange, then I mean you're always going to be behind. Yeah.
All right, Stellar Wish.
Yeah, huge miss for Darin. Just doing absolutely nothing on his second turn. It looked like he was setting himself up for a great second turn. Got all the EK out, got all the energy in the discard, but just fell a little bit short.
Picks up a switch off of the Stellar Wish. And that means that Alex will have an easy way to get the Jirachi out of the active.
Yeah, looks like he has Viridian Forest in hand. Can discard a Psychic Energy and go search for another one. It's great for getting those energy in the discard pile for Malamar, so you can Psychic Recharge.
He's got plenty of Inkay set up if he can find the Malamar this turn to evolve him.
Yeah, with that energy, if he has 2 Malamar, we already know he has Switch.
3 in hand.
So he's going to Mysterious Treasure, actually discard the Psychic Energy he just searched for. And, actually going for Ultra Necrozma GX.
Okay.
His bench is already full. I wonder if he's got an Ultra Ball and just wants to discard it.
He does have 3 Malamar in hand.
Oh, that works too.
Oh, man.
Okay. Yeah. Turn 2, triple Malamar, and a Guzma to go with it. Oh, my goodness.
Talk about getting ahead here. He's going to take the knockout onto the Marshadow GX.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Go ahead and place those damage counters onto the Giratina because, like you were saying, it's going to be 130 damage back and forth.
Yeah, that's the 2 prize liability, the unfortunate thing when you start with Marshadow GX. And that was why it was even more important for Darin to get a turn 2 attack, because he was going to be behind pretty much the entire game because that liability was always going to be on his board. So missing the attack, now falling down 2 prize cards. I mean, his opponent already has 3 Malamar in play and has the Giratina. It's almost, I don't know.
Picture perfect.
What are you supposed to do at this point? You can't really disrupt your opponent's plans at all, especially he's playing Cynthia, which means he can't Guzma out one of those Malamar to potentially break this up.
Darin needs a way to break the status quo here, but without Alex playing any GX Pokemon for Darin to maybe get a little bit of an edge in the prize race, I don't really see that happening. And that's just kind of the way that these matchups can work. If you do miss on a single turn, if at any point you show a sign of weakness and you don't get, what you need to operate your deck at full capacity, then your opponent's going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, this is the kind of situation where you have to get a little creative and maybe take some risks because you are behind in the game and there's no real clear path to come back. You might have to see things like putting down Gengar and Mimikyu GX, where even though it's a massive risk, gives up 3 prize cards, it is one of the things that could potentially not be knocked out.
I mean, personally, I would love to see it be played. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it's very scary to play down a tag team against a Malamar deck, especially one that already has 3 Malamar in play. All it would take is Ultra Necrozma, Metal Energy, you do the triple Psychic Recharge, and that's already enough to take down the Gengar and Mimikyu GX, and that is 3 prize cards instead of 2, so usually not a good option.
But if you are so far behind that you're going to lose the game anyway, maybe you speed up the clock a little bit. But Darin is going to take a knockout there with the Giratina. Take his first prize of the game.
Yeah, part of the problem here is with that Viridian Forest in play, there's not really an opportunity for Alex to miss an attack. You could bank on the fact that, maybe one turn he'll miss an energy to retreat because you need to put Giratina back on the bench, do triple Psychic Recharge, and then find a way to retreat your active Pokemon. And you might think, okay, one of the ways I can come back is if he misses some way to retreat and misses an attack one turn. But because Viridian Forest is out there, pretty much every turn, Alex can just say, okay, I'm going to go search my deck for a basic energy, and then I can just manually retreat my Jirachi.
Yeah, Darin's not playing any counter stadiums. He's not actually playing any stadiums at all. So this Viridian Forest is going to remain unchallenged for the rest of the game.
We do see Lily from Alex drawing 3 extra cards. He's pretty much perfectly set up at this point. Already has the switch in hand, so he can switch into the Giratina this turn. And he played an energy onto that Marshadow so that when his next Giratina gets knocked out, he can promote the Marshadow. It's just so he can have a Pokemon to retreat with.
He's thinking quite a few turns ahead. Gonna Stellar Wish.
Yeah, and as long as Alex doesn't miss an attack at any point, just feels like he's eventually going to win this game. I'm not sure if there's any real stalemate breakers that Darin possibly has in his deck. He does have the one Dawnwing's Necrozma GX, but if Alex isn't going to bench any Pokemon GX at all this game, getting a 1-prize knockout really doesn't do a lot for you.
Yeah, this matchup just feels relatively straightforward. It is pretty much a race, and whoever takes that first prize or is able to sort of break the status quo by taking a 2-prize knockout is likely going to be able to keep that tempo because of the level of consistency that Malamar provides.
Yeah, so this has to be the turn where Darin tries to break up this endless loop. He needs to try to Guzma out one of those Malamar, maybe knock one of them out, so then there's only 2 Psychic recharges to work with. And still, it's going to be tough, because even 2 is probably enough to get Giratina powered up every turn, but that's probably the only way you're going to have a shot.
All right, Giratina coming back. Distortion Door spreading a little bit of damage.
Yeah, Darin is not playing Ultra Necrozma GX, so that small amount of damage spreading really doesn't do much in this matchup. It's not very relevant. So he's got Guzma in hand. He can Guzma out one of those Malamar if he wants to. But again, I mean, he's down 2 prize cards. Alex is pretty much set up for the rest of the game. I'm not sure if there's a lot he can do. I mean, I've been wrong a lot about that. We've seen some crazy comebacks this tournament already, but this one looks pretty much out of hand.
There have been a lot of very drastic back and forth flips over this weekend just because of the amount of mirrors that we've been seeing. But Darin's going to take a knockout in the Malamar here. Alex will still have a Giratina ready to attack with, so he's not going to be hurting for energy on the following turn. If Darin then can knock out the Giratina and Alex misses on an energy, but we can see with Viridian Forest in play, that's just not going to be the case.
Yeah, now that Jirachi has an escape board, so every time a Pokemon gets knocked out, he can send it out in Stellar Wish, which means he'll be able to find things like Switch and Guzma and all sorts of ways to ensure that he can keep getting attackers powered up. Darin is going to continue to fight on here. Both these players are technically undefeated, 7 wins, 2 ties, 0 losses.
That's incredibly impressive over 9 rounds of Swiss.
Yep. Among the field of Zapdos and Pikachu and Zekrom and all the Electro Power decks, 2 Malamar decks ended the first day in the 1st and 2nd seed. They're the only 2 players with these records.
Means they're both setting themselves up in really phenomenal positions to make that top cut at the end of the day today if they can repeat some of the performances that they gave yesterday. But nobody's out of the water just yet. Just because you got to day 2 doesn't mean you can't slip up.
Yeah, there's actually not a lot of separation between even these 2 players and the 36th place player. There's only 4 match points that separates them, so that's a game and a tie. So they have a nice cushion right now, but they have to keep winning. I mean, if they go 0-2 to start the day, they're no better off. They can go downhill very quickly. So Alex continuing to just cycle through his deck, find important cards, get a Stellar Wish with this Jirachi, and You got to wonder what he's even going for at this point. He might have to prepare for Dawnwing's Necrozma GX at some point. He might just want to keep stockpiling cards in his hand. So if Darin decides to do something crazy like throw down Gengar and Mimikyu, he has the options available to deal with it.
Yeah, and you can see just what an incredible engine Jirachi has provided as far as consistency in these decks. We're seeing it be incredibly abundant in the electric decks and be phenomenal paired alongside paired alongside Zapdos, and also finding some very good use here in Psychic builds as well. I think you could honestly justify putting Jirachi in just about everything.
Seems like, yeah. So another Inkay goes down, and Alex just going to make sure he can continually get those Malamar out. And we see yet another Shadow Impact from Giratina now. Down to 2 prize cards. And what can Darin do? I still haven't figured it out.
Nope. I'm usually at this point in the game, we start to think of all of the outlandish possibilities, the crazy things that could happen. And if the craziest thing that we could think of that could happen is a car drives into the convention center and we have to restart the match, then usually that means that one person is so far ahead that there's just no realistic way that the opponent comes back from this. And it's just too much tempo, too far of an advantage for Alex. And really, that's all just coming back again to turn number 2 when Darin was not able to declare an attack and get an additional prize card. If Darin was at 3 and Alex was at 2, we'd be a lot closer to, maybe this one swinging in Darin's favor. But right now, it's just, without the existence of GX Pokemon in this game, not really going to happen.
Yeah, this game came down to 2 things, really. Darin starting with Marshadow GX and then missing the turn 2 attack. He's just been behind ever since. But
hey, he's still going for it.
Playing to his outs, I suppose. We're going to see the first Psychic Sphere of the weekend, powering up Malamar and going with that 60 damage attack. It's a little weird because it doesn't seem much better than using Giratina in this situation, but hey, go out with style, I suppose.
He's getting creative. It's going to be enough to get the knockout onto the Giratina.
Yeah, maybe he's thinking one of my outs is my opponent's head will explode if I attack with Malamar.
Oh, right. Okay, well then in that case, if he has any Inkay left, we should just go for the Hypnosis lock. If you want your opponent to fall asleep at the table, that's the way to do it.
Hypnosis is always on the table.
All right, discarding Dawnwing's Necrozma with Viridian Forest. Going to go and search out another Psychic Energy.
And you can see
just... He's going to grab Metal, actually.
Once again, Alex is going to be able to power up a Giratina. It's going to come right out of the discard pile once more with that Distortion Door ability. And if he can get a 3rd Malamar into play, it's just going to triple Psychic Recharge. Get Giratina powered up. Use Shadow Impact again, go down to 1 prize, and then he's still really far ahead in this game.
I mean, it is just the deck doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Have 3 Malamar in play at all times, have 1 attacker you're ready to power up every turn, cycle through your deck consistently with Jirachi. He just hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah, from turn 2 on, he got the perfect setup. Once you get 3 Malamar out, the deck flows perfectly. The fact that Giratina can constantly bring itself out of the discard pile means that you're never going to miss an attacker. You're always just going to have Giratina. You're always going to have 3 Psychic Energy with those 3 Psychic Recharges to power up that Giratina. And it's just an endless loop. As long as Giratina can get a knockout every turn, your opponent can't really do much about it.
It's not a super flashy deck, but it's consistent. And ultimately, that's how you get a 7-0-2 record going into day number 2 of competition. You need to put up those consistent results.
Okay, so Alex saying anything you can do, I can do better. You're going to see a Malamar knock out a Malamar.
I don't advocate for Malamar on Malamar violence. It's not great, but that Psychic weakness means that it's going to get the job done for Alex. He's going to go down to 1 prize.
Indeed. So now Darin's still behind 2 prize cards. No matter what he does, if Alex has Guzma, the game is over. He's just going to be able to pick off one of those final Malamar and win the game. So even if Darin throws down his Dawnwings Necrozma GX, uses that Moon's Eclipse GX attack, you can just Guzma around it and get the last prize.
Yeah, it makes Necrozma immune for a turn, but that shouldn't be an issue for Alex to still be able to close out the game. There we can see that Gengar and Mimikyu GX, but too much of a liability for Darin to go with this game, even though he was behind from the start. It didn't seem like he wanted to take that risk, really.
He's eyeing it up, though.
Maybe now's the time?
Ooh, there it is.
The second tag team of the weekend has entered play.
Indeed. Of course, Gengar and Mimikyu has a fairly risky attack with that Poltergeist. You have your opponent reveal their hand, and then it does 50 damage for each trainer card in their hand. It goes really well with that Horror House GX attack, where both players draw up to 7 cards, and then if you have an extra energy, your opponent can't play any cards on their next turn. So the idea is you force them to draw a bunch of cards, then they can't play any of them, and then next turn you hit them with a big Poltergeist.
And would you look at that? Everybody's playing Jirachi and searching out trainer cards.
Yeah.
Maybe Darin's onto something here.
Yeah, this is the kind of the Hail Mary that Darin needed. You got to try something else. If you just throw out another Giratina, it's going to get knocked out. You're going to lose. Might as well try to put out the 240 HP Pokemon. At this point, when your opponent's at 1 prize card, there's no downside to using a tag team. It's just a Pokemon that's harder to knock out.
It's just strictly better than anything else that you could possibly play.
Yeah, you don't lose worse because you gave up 3 prizes when your opponent only has 1.
It's not like you black out and have to give them money like you do in the game.
Right.
Go back to the Pokemon Center because your opponent took 2 prize.
That was
additional.
A mighty amount of damage. I believe that was a 600 damage Poltergeist to that poor Malamar. But that's probably going to end the game. And yeah, it looks like Alex Silva is going to take game number 1. It did take well over 25 minutes. So
it is
not a ton of time left.
No, it is sort of when you get into the mid to later stages of that game. If you're Darin, you're realizing that you are so far behind that it's very unrealistic that you do come back. And Gengar and Mimikyu is one route to go, but again, it's very unlikely that Alex isn't going to be able to take the final prize from there. So I do wonder, if Darin wants to try and force this to go the full 3 games, is it right to just scoop up game number 1 and move into game number 2 a little bit quicker there? We're going to have to see how that plays out, if they can complete a full game 2 here. And, if we end up with a definitive victory for Alex, or if Darin can try and throw this into a draw.
Yeah, the thing that makes not conceding earlier questionable is Darin is down 2 prize cards. So even if he's in the perfect situation where he throws out the Gengar and Mimikyu, Alex doesn't have a Guzma, he still has to take 2 more knockouts.
Yeah, he still doesn't win the next turn.
Right.
If it was just, a situation where on a single turn he puts him on check unless he has a Guzma, and then he doesn't have it and he wins a game, that I think is worth playing out.
Yeah.
But when you need your opponent to go 2 turns having essentially nothing, I think that's a little bit too much to ask.
Right, especially because they can just 2-hit knockout your Gengar and Mimikyu at that point. Yeah, I guess if Alex missed that turn and then Darin got to follow up with the Dawnwings Necrozma GX, if he didn't find Guzma in 2 turns, perhaps he still could have won, but it just seems like such a low chance, especially because Alex just didn't play many Guzma throughout the course of the game. And he still had access to Jirachi every turn. It just seemed like a matter of time.
Well, we're getting into game number 2 here. Darin desperately hoping that he gets a better active Pokemon to start than that Marshadow GX that we saw in the last game put him in such a behind position for the duration of the game.
That is one of the downsides of this Psychic Malamar build. It plays a lot of GXs. It's got 2 Marshadow GX, 1 Dawnwings Necrozma, 1 Gengar and Mimikyu, 1 Necrozma, 1 Tapu Lele GX. And they're all miserable starters in the mirror match where your opponent can easily get 1-hit knockouts on all of these things at some point. They're just huge liabilities when all you want to do is attack with Giratina every turn. So he's got a lot of bad starting Pokemon, and that can really be what causes a win or a loss in the matchup. If you start off with the wrong Pokemon, that can be it. It's like we Got
Looks
some
like the
problems.
flies like playing Pokemon too. Look, I get it.
Clive is here.
Cutie Fly is a great Pokemon, and yes, Clive is here. Oh man, throwback moment. But still, this is a 2-player game, Fly. You can go enter the side events if you want to play so badly.
Okay, here we go. Game 2 starting off, and oh no, here you go again.
Necrozma GX.
Yep.
Folks, we're back in a very similar situation from the previous game, and not quite as bad as the Marshadow in the opener, but
It's just as bad.
it's not a Jirachi. It's not a Giratina.
It is arguably worse. It has 2 retreat instead of the 1 on Marshadow GX.
It does still have the psychic weakness. Okay, yeah.
It's pretty bad.
It's okay, yeah. Yeah, it's bad.
So Darin going to do probably what he did in the first game, play out a bunch of stuff, let loose, and hope that even though he started off with this Necrozma GX, that he can disrupt his opponent's hand and kind of get a free win.
Yeah, he did let loose in the previous game, but Alex, of course, drew into that Lily on turn 1, so it was really ineffective there. Maybe he can go about it again this time, and Alex won't have such a good draw.
Yeah, looks like a good start. He does have Ultra Ball for the Inkay, got 2 of them down. Can attach an energy, and Lily for 6 cards. So I think he probably just wants to find another Inkay and then a way to get Marshadow, which he has done. Well
Picks
done.
up an escape board as well, so he will have a way to retreat the Necrozma GX on the next turn if he wants to. Although he'd very much rather just, Guzma it to the bench.
He's also getting Psychic Energy in the discard pile, so he can fuel that Malamar Psychic recharge on his second turn. And he's actually going to Mysterious Treasure for the Giratina, and then you can Ultra Ball that Giratina to the discard pile. It's almost like discarding a card for free because you can get it back with Distortion Door.
Yeah, it's a continuous engine that he can't take quite as much advantage of as Alex can, because Alex has Sky Scorching Light GX off of Ultra Necrozma to maybe pick off something on the bench at some point during the game with the help of Distortion Door, but it's free damage. Who doesn't like free damage?
Yeah. All right, Darin trying to figure out, is it time to let loose? If I'm in Darin's shoes and I am starting with Necrozma GX, I am here to take some risks and try to steal a game here. And no better way to do that than let loose.
All right, 4 cards for each player. Alex, importantly, just had an Inkay to start, didn't have anything on the bench, so he's going to have to throw back all those precious cards. And Darin is really hoping that Alex does not pick up a Lily this time around. Or a Cynthia. Just no draw supporters is what Darin's looking to see.
Yep, that's the name of the game. Just drop down Marshadow on the first turn, let loose. Hope your opponent draws complete garbage, and then knock out their only Pokemon.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's how we could get 3 games in real fast.
Yeah. Seen it happen plenty of times. Of course, you could also destroy your own hand and then have nothing to do on the second turn. That is the alternate outcome of playing Marshadow.
Congratulations. You played yourself.
Indeed. Looks like Alex does have an Ultra Ball. He does have a supporter card. So that let loose is not going to affect him very much. Darin's not going to be happy to see that Ultra Ball, especially because he discarded that Erica's Hospitality, because then he knows he's got a supporter. You wouldn't throw that away if you had nothing else.
Yeah. Favoring that Jirachi, but taking another look through. Figure out what's prized this game.
And it looks like this is just going to be similar to the first game. We'll see if Darin can pull off an attack on the second turn, but otherwise it's just looking like a repeat. He starts with a GX that he doesn't want to start with, plays Let Loose. His opponent draws a good hand off of it, and he just kind of falls behind from there.
At some point, Alex will be able to knock out the Necrozma GX. He'll take 2 prizes, and even if Darin goes 1 for 1 from then on in the game, he's still going to be behind, and Alex is going to take the 6th prize before Darin can. So maybe we'll be seeing Darin get creative here a little bit earlier this game.
We just might, yeah. Does have to play an energy to retreat and has to discard Metal Energy, which will not help him fuel Psychic Recharge. I don't believe he's gotten any Psychic Energy in his discard pile yet, so not quite as good as his start in the first game. Even if he is able to get Malamar out on the second turn, without any Psychic Energy in there, it's pretty much worthless.
Mysterious Treasure away that Giratina. He can, of course, pull it right back.
And are we going to see Alex fire back with a let loose of his own? That is how the first game played out. Doesn't look like he has any other energy cards in his hand. He would love to get an energy attachment onto the Giratina this turn and start, well, he's already attached energy for the turn, but he would love to set himself up a little further. He's only got a couple cards in his hand, but nope, looks like he's just happy to set up 3 Inkay and hope that his opponent can't get the turn 2 knockout. Currently, he cannot.
He's got the Guzma to bring up the Inkay.
Yeah, if he draws a Psychic Energy, he's got the Gengar and Mimikyu in hand.
Yeah, that's true. He's just seen Alex go through quite a few cards in his hand, though.
Not a good draw for Darin. Finds a second Guzma. And that is not going to help him do anything on this turn.
I think the writing's on the wall, Kyle. That's just such a big whiff.
Certainly not looking good.
I mean, you can throw down the...
No, not a whole lot.
Can't do that.
He could Horror House GX with the Gengar and Mimikyu, but he doesn't have the extra energy, so it would just be both players draw till they have 7 cards in their hand. And
then your opponent gets to play the cards first.
Indeed. That is not a good scenario for you.
I don't like that.
So Psychic Recharge going on to the Marshadow just so you can have that pivot Pokemon to retreat with. And going to bring back Giratina with the Distortion Door ability. And he's going to try to get this Necrozma GX out of harm's way.
Giratina in the active means that Darin can't Psychic Recharge to it automatically, but he doesn't have the energy or the Malamar available for that right now.
Yeah, I'm surprised Darin didn't use one of his Guzma that turn. It wouldn't accomplish a whole lot, but it would put Jirachi on the bench so that Alex doesn't get to use Stellar Wish for free.
Yeah, you kind of want to force Alex into as awkward of a position as Darin can, because Darin is behind already. So maybe the thought of locking an Inkay into the active and not allowing Alex to Stellar Wish on the next turn would have been tempting.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it less likely that he gets attacked on the next turn.
Viridian Forest back in play, and like we saw in the last game, Darin doesn't have any counter stadiums, doesn't have any field blowers, so this Viridian Forest is just going to be in play for the rest of the game. Consistently funneling energy into hand for Alex, allowing him to discard Psychic Energy, Psychic Recharge it back onto the Giratina.
Yeah, the question is, does he even want to play the Viridian Forest? He saw his opponent didn't play any energy that turn. It might just hurt him to play the Viridian Forest here.
Kyle, where do those energy cards come from? Like those specific ones, because they're beautiful.
Ones?
The ones that Alex is playing with the Pokemon in the background.
Looks like the Call of Legends design. Yeah,
well, they're fantastic.
Yeah, there's the Heart Gold, Soul Silver, which are the non-foil ones, and then the Call of Legends ones, which are the same artwork, but they are foil.
I was not playing around that time.
Those are some
wish I was now.
Some of the big fan favorites in terms of energy cards. A lot of people love those.
All right, Guzma up, Inkay.
Offensive Marshadow. Here we go. Does 30 damage. Multiply that times 2 for weakness, and you get the Shadow Punch for the knockout. Not very often you see Marshadow throwing out a punch here, but it is going to get a knockout, and hey, that's not a bad thing. Alex was not able to power up Giratina, did not get an attack off on that turn, and Darin actually has the prize lead now.
Yeah, Alex just doesn't have the Malamar set up, doesn't have the Psychic Energy in the discard just yet. So Darin does manage to take the first prize of the game here, and if he's able to take another one before Alex is able to take one, then he will actually remain ahead even when Alex is able to knock out that Necrozma GX. So this little bit of breathing room that Darin's managed to create for himself actually is really impactful.
Yeah, this is the big turn. If Alex misses an attack, it's almost like starting with the GX doesn't really matter. If you can get ahead 2 prize cards, then you're golden. You're going to win the race the rest of the way.
It's a tall order. You need to take 2 prizes before your opponent takes any, but It's looking like Darin could do that.
Yeah, although Alex does get Psychic Energy in the discard pile thanks to Viridian Forest. He attached to the Giratina last turn. He can attach one this turn, so if he can get one Malamar plus a way to switch out that Jirachi, he can use Shadow Impact and start to fight back, even up the prize race here. But he's going to need to set up a couple Malamar before he really feels comfortable. Only having one Malamar in play doesn't feel very good. It doesn't let you power up Giratina every turn, so Alex seems to be struggling a little bit compared to the last game, although he does have Mysterious Treasure in hand. It looks like an Ultra Ball as well, so
this deck is really comfortable with 2 Malamar and operates beautifully when you have all 3. 1 is just not going to be enough.
Yeah, we might be off to the races here. A very slow race, apparently, but off to the races.
It's a turtle race.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Slow and steady.
Doesn't matter the overall pace you're setting as long as everybody's going at the same pace.
All right, 1 Malamar does come out. That is the key to this deck, using that Psychic Recharge ability. Looks like he discarded Viridian Forest on accident. So easy to do when you have a Stadium card out there. You just assume trainer cards are supposed to go to the discard pile. Happens all the time. But Giratina getting powered up with 1 more Psychic Energy or 1 more Malamar. Can get the 3rd energy onto Giratina, and then it comes down to, does Alex have a way to move the Jirachi, send Giratina out and attack?
He's definitely got to accomplish a couple different things here.
Well, he does have Guzma, so at the very least he can Guzma, maybe go after Malamar, and attack with Giratina's Shadow Impact.
He's got the energy from the Viridian Forest, of course, putting 4 damage counters onto the Giratina, but taking the all-important Malamar off of the board now. And that means that Darin, at most, is going to be able to have 1 Malamar in play this turn.
I think we're going to see another Shadow Punch. Darin has another Guzma in hand, and there's an Inkay that can be knocked out by Marshadow.
Marshadow MVP?
Woo!
Okay. You know what? You got to do what you got to do. And
right.
Clearly plan A did not work for Darin in the last game, so he's just, you know what, take the knockouts wherever you can.
It's like he is going to discard the Gengar and Mimikyu GX so he can Viridian Forest, find a Psychic Energy, and try to keep up the pace here. Did not think we'd be sitting here saying that Marshadow's Shadow Punch would take 2 knockouts in this game, but here we are. Weakness is a crazy thing.
I do think that is kind of a hallmark of this weekend as well. It's players bringing these incredibly powerful decks with these awesome GX-based strategies and then having to get scrappy and use Pokemon that they don't necessarily want to use because they're playing matchups where, Pikachu and Zekrom are liabilities, where GX Pokemon in general are just too fragile.
Yep.
Can't put those down and lose the game.
Yeah, that's a sign of a good player. You always got to look at every option you have available. Look at every card, even sometimes attacking with silly things like Marshadow's Shadow Punch can win you the game, where if you weren't paying attention and you got upset that things are not going the way they should be and you just passed the turn, you're going to lose some games where you could have won if you just took a few chances, started attacking with unusual things.
Darin just working with 2 Psychic Energy and a Rescue Stretcher in hand right now, though. He's going to need to be able to draw some cards if he can keep up this pace. He's ahead by 1 prize right now, but again, Alex is going to be able to knock out that Necrozma GX at one point and swing this into his favor. So Darin needs to keep the pace and even accelerate his own pace a little bit. He's not going to be able to do that with his current hand.
Yeah, part of the problem is he only has 1 Malamar, and now 2 Inkay have been knocked out. So that means he's got 1 Inkay left. He could also find a Rescue Stretcher. But, if he only has 1 Malamar for the majority of the game, he is going to start missing attacks. And that's one way you can make up the gap, even if you are forced to start with one of those GXs. It's like Alex, for whatever reason, has just been a little off this game. Almost feels like he's been 1 card short pretty frequently.
Yeah, it's not necessarily bad turns, but just slightly suboptimal ones, I would say. just moving a little bit slower than he did in the previous game. But obviously, the previous game he had 3 Malamar set up the entire time, and he was able to bring back Giratina from the discard like 2 or 3 times. This is just not as straightforward of a game, I suppose. But the best players are the ones who are able to, obviously understand when everything goes right, but still be able to play optimally when, not everything goes right.
Oh, there we do see Guzma going after Necrozma GX, right. So the swing is going to happen here. Alex going to go down to 3 prize cards, take the lead. Cora, he left the biggest menace on the field. The Marshadow still has 2 energy.
That can deal 60 damage.
If he finds one more Guzma, he can knock out a 3rd Inkay.
Oh, man. There is just Giratina that can, with 1 more energy, knock out the Giratina on Alex's side.
It would be pretty entertaining to watch the Marshadow rack up the 3rd knockout, though.
I mean, but actually, just take all 6 prizes with your Marshadow. They say that Marshadow is best used to let loose, but Darin has unlocked the hidden potential of the Marshadow, and that's 60 damage with weakness.
Indeed. So at this point, Darin does have his 2nd Malamar out, so he can potentially start powering up Giratina every turn from this point on. He's going to take another knockout, and currently Alex just has the 1 Malamar. If he is unable to get an attack off on the next turn, Darin's going to be back in the lead. So these next few turns are going to be crucial for this game.
This one is certainly much closer than the previous one, and we've only got 4 minutes on the clock now. So this game is, I would think it's reasonable to expect this one to finish, but we could be looking at a draw in the series if it does finish.
Yep, so this is a big turn. Oh, he does find the 2nd Malamar. That's a huge, huge swing in the game here. Thanks to Viridian Forest, he can find the energy to attach for the turn, so he'll guarantee himself another Shadow Impact.
Well, this does mean that Alex is going to be able to stay ahead here, and with 3.5 minutes left and 2 prizes left for him to take after this turn, it is possible that he could actually just get the 2-0 victory in this series. Now, that 2nd Malamar was so important this turn to allow him to actually take this 4th prize.
Yeah, it really seems like Alex is going to take control of this game at this point. It's unfortunate for Darin. He has also discarded his Gengar and Mimikyu GX, so one of those big Pokemon that could perhaps take a hit is now in the discard pile, but he still has a shot to pull this game off if he can get one big turn with that Dawnwings Necrozma GX. It's going to be a little bit different than the previous game. He's only down 1 prize card this time, so if he can make Alex miss a turn, if he misses that Guzma, the Dawnwings Necrozma GX could be the difference maker and give Darin a chance to still win this game. Still anybody's game.
Okay, gonna take a Lily off for the Stellar Wish.
Yeah, even though Alex isn't going to play that Lily this turn, just pulling that card out of your deck improves your odds for drawing something good on the next turn. So even if you're taking cards that don't immediately help you, just pulling cards out of your deck is so great with Jirachi Stellar Wish. It just improves your odds every turn of pulling off everything you need to do.
Retreat the Jirachi, Giratina back into the active.
There we go. Another
Shadow Impact for another knockout here.
Another one.
Another one.
Just Shadow Impact.
Over and over again.
Back and forth, back and forth.
It does seem like with the prevalence of Jirachi and a skateboard and quite a few stadiums in the meta right now, maybe we'll be seeing Field Blower come back just to try and disrupt this strategy.
Yeah.
Because really, so much of what Alex is wanting to do this game is just going uncontested. All right, but a Cynthia for Darin.
Yep, we're going to see the same play pattern. Giratina comes back, Psychic Recharge onto it, Shadow Impact once again. But this is that spot where Darin finds himself behind 1 prize card. And if you keep trading back and forth, I mean, the writing's on the wall. You're going to lose that game. You're going to need to see something from Darin Probably not this turn, but next turn he's going to have to go for something like, well, there's that Dawnwings Necrozma GX. He's going to need to power that up on the next turn to have a chance, I think.
Power it up and then use the invasion ability. Once per turn, it can move from the bench to the active.
He has used both Psychic Recharge abilities, has that Friend Ball in his hand. Could search his deck for Psychic or a Metal Pokemon, but at this point, not really helping.
All right, retreat the Marshadow. Giratina going to take a knockout here. Put Darin down to 2 prizes. And he's even again, but consistently the same issue for him. He's having a difficult time getting ahead in this this series.
Right. And it looks like time has been called at this point. So we are going to enter the final few turns of this game, assuming our timer is correct.
Usually it's close.
Yeah. We'll see. But, I mean, Alex is going to have a chance to win this game no matter what. He does Viridian Forest and look through his deck, and I believe there's only 1 Psychic Energy left in his deck.
Okay.
One of the ways you can lose is by simply running out of energy to attach. Even if you have 2 Malamar out, you can miss an attack if you just don't have one to attach from your hand. And yeah, it looks like Alex is turn 1 in this match, which pretty much wraps it up for him, I think.
He's going to have 2 turns of knockouts to take, which should equal the final 2 prizes that he needs.
Yeah, the problem is if Alex is turn 1, that means Darin only gets 1 turn. And as long as Alex doesn't play down a GX, Darin can't take 2 knockouts in a single turn. And if this game ends, or if the match ends with Alex up 1-0, he wins the match.
Will just win.
Yeah. It looks like they are going to finish this series off, play it out. I'm certain we'll see this turn end with Alex using Giratina's Shadow Impact for the 700th time of this series.
Yeah,
seems
about.
like it's only been 2 attacks used in this entire match. Shadow Impact and Shadow Punch.
I think there was a single Psychic Sphere, and it was
true,
undoubtedly the highlight.
Yeah, and a Poltergeist.
Oh, yeah. That was nice. It's quite literally Gengar and Mimikyu's 15 seconds of fame, because the game ended right after that.
Indeed.
Stellar Wish again.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not even sure what Alex would be digging for. Maybe just a
Countering
Guzma to make sure he
cards.
can wrap up the game on the next turn.
Just insulate yourself as much as you possibly can.
All right, another Stellar Wish has been used. Probably see that Giratina come out of the discard pile.
I would suggest we get a Stellar Wish counter on the overlay, but it happens so frequently that we would need a dedicated graphics person to update it manually, and that would be a full-time job.
Yeah. Plus, it would get so many digits that it would just take up too much space on the screen.
Yeah, eventually we'd run out of room.
All right, Alex just taking every precaution, wants to make sure he does not blow this match. That's something you got to do when you're ahead in a game. Figure out, is there any way I can actually lose at this point? What are my opponent's outs? And can I prevent any of them from happening?
Just wants to make sure he's got this one fully locked up. Mysterious Treasure away the Giratina, find a Marshadow.
Yep, just thinning out cards from his deck so he doesn't draw them on the next turn. I guess he could let loose this turn and try to stop the Dawnwings Necrozma GX thing from happening, but I don't even know if that's necessary. If he's got a Guzma in his hand, he'll probably just end up winning this game.
Not sure that he does have one right now, though.
Yeah, and another problem is, even if Darin goes Dawnwings Necrozma GX, use Moon's Eclipse GX, Alex doesn't even necessarily need Guzma. If he just has Ultra Necrozma GX and a Metal Energy, he can Sky Scorching Light GX and finish off that Marshadow on the bench. So it looks like the game is all but wrapped up for Alex. Darin's going to try to find some way to not lose here, but Alex has played beautifully throughout this entire match. He's put himself in a position to attack every turn. Took advantage of his opponent starting with the GX in both games, and yeah, sometimes it's all you got to do.
Even if Darin can put himself in a position to not lose this game because Alex is up 1-0, Alex will just win the series here because Darin cannot end the game on this turn.
So we see that Dawnwing's Necrozma GX can use the Moon's Eclipse GX attack if he finds a third Psychic Energy, but is it even going to matter?
No.
It's like there's some kind of chatter going on at the table.
It's like they're discussing the order of perhaps extra turns.
Yeah, sure seems like it. There's always some tricky timing with when the extra turns actually begin. Mm-hmm. If time gets called during someone's turn, that means that they are turn 0, and then we get turn 1, 2, and 3. So effectively, both players get 2 turns after time is called. But if I just took a knockout and you haven't promoted your Pokemon yet, and time gets called, then
it's really turn 0 then.
Yeah. Then the person who hasn't promoted their Pokemon yet will become turn 1, and you don't really get that turn 0.
Mm-hmm. That is tricky.
Yes.
That is tricky, especially since the players, obviously they can't see a game clock to be able to try and manipulate turn 0 in any way. But the really good players will start to get a feel for when it's been about 50 minutes. Seems to be that one of the players is disputing exactly when turn 0 was called. So trying to figure out exactly the situation that we're talking about, because it very realistically could make a difference.
Yeah. Looking at Alex's hand, I can tell you it doesn't make a difference. Even if Darin pulls off the Moon's Eclipse GX, gets the knockout, and has this Pokemon that's immune to damage on the next turn, Alex has Ultra Necrozma GX and a Beast Energy in hand, so he can simply use Sky Scorching Light GX, put 6 damage counters on the Marshadow, and our champion Marshadow will finally fall.
He's done such a nice job this game. I mean, he really has.
Be a fitting end, though.
Obviously, we have caster vision. We can see both of the players' hands.
Yeah.
But it looks like they are still going to be disputing exactly when turn 0 took place and who it was assigned to. So they're going to keep talking through that one. But it looks like Alex is going to win this series. He's 1-0 going into this game, and it does not look, to us at least, like Darin can actually win this game and send it to a draw. So this should not impact the overall outcome of the series, and it should be Alex that is going to 8-0-2.
Yeah, but if you're Darin, I mean, it's certainly worth disputing. Every match win, every match point counts for a lot, especially when you're this deep into the tournament. So, I mean, as far as he knows, he has a chance to win the game still if he gets an extra turn. So, I mean, you might as well try to fight for it. It's such a gray line of whose turn was it?
I mean, human error is a very real factor when we're playing card games, especially in real life, as opposed to playing, PTCGO, where the computer does it for you. So if the judge does not make it abundantly clear who is turn 0, who is turn 1, then sometimes confusion happens. And that's unfortunate, but that's what we're dealing with here. So we're going to get that cleared up as quickly as we possibly can, and we will have a definitive conclusion to this first series of the day. Again, we're playing through 5 Swiss rounds today, and we are going to make our cut to top 8. We're going to be streaming 1 top 8 match and 1 top 4 match for y'all, and then we will have our finals determined and play through the finals in the junior, seniors, and masters division tomorrow. So kicking off the day, I would say with some strong gameplay, some interesting deck choices, especially on the side of Darin, bringing that non-Ultra Necrozma Malamar variant. I think he's the only one who's actually got that list here in the top 36 players that we have. But in a meta that has been dominated by electric-type decks, seeing 2 Malamar variants go head-to-head as the top 2 players in the standings, that's kind of nice.
Yeah. And, I mean, if Darin does lose this series, this will be his first loss of the entire tournament, so pretty big deal. And Alex will continue to be on top of the standings with 26 match points and try to separate himself from the rest of the pack and lock himself a spot for that top 8. This whole situation is giving me flashbacks to the North America International Championships a few years ago, where we had Ryan Sablehouse and Tord Reklev, where there was a big dispute over whose turn it was when a Pokemon was getting promoted between turns, and Tord ended up winning that match, which was a top 8 match, which was pretty huge, and it worked in his favor in that tournament. But always been a little bit of controversy with, whose turn is it when we enter those final turns.
We are still awaiting the final judgment call as to the ruling here as to which player actually started turn 0 and how many turns are still remaining in the game. From what we saw, it looked to be that Alex was turn 1, Darin would be turn 2, and then Alex would have turn 3 to take the final knockout for the final prize of the game.
All right, so Dawnwing's Necrozma GX is down. Can use that invasion ability, send it out there, and use the Moon's Eclipse GX attack. This is the only way that Darin could have a shot to win this game. If Alex does not have Guzma or a way to knock out one of the benched Pokemon, then Darin could swing the game back in his favor by himself one more turn and then win the game and get a tie out of this series.
Yes, but that would only be possible if Alex was turn 0. If this was now turn 1 for Darin, Alex had turn 2 and could not knock out a Pokemon, and then Darin would be turn 3. But the official call has been made. Darin was turn 0, so Alex would be turn 1, and this would now be
I don't know if that changed
anything. I think that's what we assumed.
All right, I'm guessing it changed to Darin gets 2 turns now. I don't know. We'll find out.
I guess we'll see how many more turns they play out.
Yeah.
We were thinking that Darin was turn 0, Alex was turn 1.
Right.
So maybe it was changed to Alex's turn 0. This is now Darin's turn 1. I don't know.
Guess we'll just have to let it play out and see.
We're along for the ride here. I have no
right.
problem with sitting back and watching it play out.
Yeah, I think in this situation, Darin would love to try to disrupt Alex's hand. This is where you think back to all those games, all those years where you would get down to the situation and you would play N and disrupt your opponent's hand, put them at a 1-card hand, and maybe they wouldn't draw the game-winning Guzma. But we are in the Sun and Moon era at this point.
It's an endless world.
We only have things like Judge and Marshadow to disrupt the opponent's hand. And, Darin has used his Marshadow, doesn't play Judge. So, no way to disrupt his opponent's hand.
Okay, so we have full confirmation. Alex was turn 0.
Okay.
This is turn 1 for Darin. Alex will be turn 2, and Darin will be turn 3. So, if Darin does use Moon's Eclipse GX this turn, the Ultra Necrozma or the Dawnwing's Necrozma becomes immune, and then Alex does not have a Guzma to take the final knockout, then Darin actually could win this game and force the draw.
Yeah. All right, so Darin doing whatever he can to not lose this game, to tie up the series. And we are going to see the Moon's Eclipse GX attack. One of the only ways you can swing momentum in a game in this standard format currently. We have that and Jolteon GX's Swift Run GX attack as the main ways to kind of disrupt the pace of a game and start to make a comeback. Looks like, there is the Ultra Necrozma GX, the Beast Energy. He can Psychic Recharge and simply use Sky Scorching Light GX. Can't put any damage counters on Dawnwing's Necrozma, but he can knock out that Marshadow and the Inkay on the bench. And Alex Silva will wrap up this match. He moves on to 8-0-2, 26 match points. And And he is on top of the standings at this point.
Very impressive stuff. Darin taking his first loss of the tournament, but you know what? Taking that first loss in round number 10, that is nothing to be ashamed of. So he's still looking quite good, but Alex pulling ahead of the pack here. Now a couple more wins, and he will be able to secure himself that top 8 cut. Player from Brazil, South America, typically very strong when it comes to Pokemon.